blanket in here? Could you maybe move over just like a little bit? Share like a little bit of the mattress areas? Oh, thank you. Oof. Hello. I noticed recently a thing. How many of these videos start with like, have you noticed? I have a very hard time stopping working before I make myself ill and get a migraine and get completely knocked down and can't move. So resting is a thing that we're all supposed to just know how to do and just do it. And then people give you these lists of like, here's different ways you can rest. Do it. And it turns out I'm not good at it. So I saw these videos online on YouTubes, that were like, get ready with me videos, or work with me videos, or study with me videos. All of these body doubling videos. So yeah, there's all of these videos with dogs in them who are taking up more than their fair share of the blanket. You're covered in a blanket already. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah. Hello, my sleepy time friend. Work with me, study with me videos. But we don't have get resty with me body doubling videos. Wow. So if you're in the mental space to rest together for the next hour or however long this video ends up being, we're gonna real time rest together. So this is one of those videos that like you put on the TVs where you can see it while you're doing your rest. I think the ingredients for this recipe for today are this lovely cup of coffee that I did not make for myself, but adorable husband human made for me. If you have a fuzzy friend who exercised maybe slightly too much yesterday and who is also exhausted, they're also welcome in the recipe. You can have a phone, you can have a book, you can have a fiddly hand project like knitting or crocheting. I don't currently have one of those. Oh, yawns are a good sign. Yawns are a good sign that we're doing resting correctly. Did you know you have tufts directly coming out of your butt? Did you know that your butt generates just free tufts for everyone to enjoy? Yeah? Did you know about this butt tuft generating situation? Fluff. So yeah, some of this will be chatty. Some of this I will be reading to you from activist affordances, How Disabled People Improvise More Habitable Worlds, because I want to read this book from the San Francisco Public Library. Tasty snack. Even more tasty snack because I requested that the library buy this book specifically so that I could read it. It's just my new method. If there's a book I want, instead of buying it myself, I ask the library, hey, would you give me this book for me? And then I put it on hold. In this way, I enrich my community's access to information that I care about. What time is it? Let's approximate how much time we're going to take to rest today. Okay. We have a nice little sunshine patch on us right here. We have all these nice cushions. Oh, we're in cozified. We have our blankie. We have our grandma sweater. This is the sweater that I inherited from my grandma before she passed. After she passed. I inherited it after she passed. It was my grandma's. I like it a lot. It was extremely itchy when I got it, so I put this lining in. It's a snack. Resting is hard, and sometimes I know I need it, but I don't want to because this is boring. Or I'll start trying resting and I'll get distracted from my resting by doing exciting adventures with doing things, playing with the dog or going for a walk or all kinds of things, when actually what my body needs is just shut the fuck up and sit down for a little while. So I don't know if this video is useful, but you know what? I don't ever know if anything I've ever done is useful. So why would that matter? Oh, we are in a mood today. I am unemployed. My partner is also recently unemployed. So now we are double unemployed, which is maximum stress, to be honest. So stress. And not because we're going to lose our housing tomorrow, because we've spent years making sure we specifically had money for housing in case we were unemployed. But also I've been looking for work, usually as a product designer, interaction designer, creative director, those kinds of things, for 10 months. I was laid off in February, and it's almost December. So I've definitely been in a really high stress state, especially because of my disability and the medical sort of requirements of that disability, and the way that in the United States, healthcare and work are very strongly tied together. So now having to find private health insurance, also quite terrifying. So yeah, it's been a really scary time in my own personal life. And then also, the world is happening, which I'm not going to talk about actually, because we're trying to rest. We're not trying to stress ourselves out. But I'm just trying to acknowledge that I've had a lot of stress lately, and resting is an important part of managing stress. Oh my gosh. I don't think you can see it from that angle, but she's got twitching nose. Twitching nose. Yeah. I was talking about you. I'm so sorry. Was that embarrassing that I was talking about you? Yeah. Asleep on my foot. Okay. So now that we have set the context for what we're doing here and why, resting together, and because stress is too many, let's do a little bit of, I'm going to read to you. I'm going to start with, I'm not the best at reading out loud, but that's why we practice things. We don't always necessarily be good at things right away. I know, shocking realization to learn. Not good at things all the time. I have already read the introduction, so we are going to read Part 1, Shrinkage. Affordance encounters disability. That's what we're doing right now. We're making an affordance for disability by making not only resting for me, but also making a resting assistant for y'all in the future / inside of the internet. We're making an affordance for you, and I would like to know whether or not this is actually useful to you. There is a wild Steven has been spotted. If we're lucky, the wild Steven might approach. No wild Steven for us, only wild Steven grumble noises. Prepare for a bumpy journey into this transdisciplinary encounter. Cruising across disciplines and their subject matter is bound to be disconcerting. Get ready for 2 sharp transitions that will throw you from one discipline and topic to another. These jolts and jerks will be worthwhile, I suggest, because they offer opportunities to dislodge well-rehearsed arguments in our fields. In those very shocks, we can discover ways of seeing long-standing issues and debates in ways that can better account for disabilities in terms of how they manifest in bodies and in the worlds they inhabit. I'm going to say this book is slightly more verbose than I would expect, but that's okay. One way to describe disability is that it concerns the relation between body and environment, a concern that has long occupied disability studies. Various concepts and frameworks have been developed to address this relation, such as the social model, which attributes the cause of disability to environmental and societal barriers, and misfit, which describes the discrepancy between body and world. But at this contemporary juncture, when the planet is facing ecological collapse and becoming less and less habitable, we need new approaches to articulate the body-environment relation. Hence, the 2 sharp transitions that will follow. I begin the chapter with a brief historical survey of how disability studies has articulated this core concern since its emergence as a field, in particular through the social model and debates about its analytical value. Then the first transition occurs, a turn to ecological psychology and its theory of affordances as a more effective account of the body-environment relation for disability studies. Then comes I'm stuttering. Interesting. Then comes the second transition. I return to disability and bring in my ethnographic materials to stage an encounter between affordance and disability, in which disability rubs against the standard theory of affordance. The concept of affordance, I argue, has a significant potential for disability studies in that it can provide a non-dualist, non-anthropocentric framework to address its core concerns. But for that potential to be realized, it needs to be tweaked, bent, and altered, which is what I set out to do at the end of this chapter, and what I continue doing throughout the rest of the book. Drawing on my ethnographic vignettes, I offer the concept of shrinkage to name the ways that disability is experienced as the constraining, diminishing, and at times complete deprivation of available affordances. It is within a shrinking world of possibilities that it becomes a necessity to create affordances in their physical absence. And it is precisely this necessity to create affordances and all the labor and ingenuity that it takes to make things within constraints that the traditional theory of affordance omits, and that I want to account for in my theorization of affordances. You can tell this is a very academic book, but I like this line. It is within a shrinking world of possibilities that it becomes a necessity to create affordances in their physical absence, and it is precisely with this necessity to create affordances that all the labor and ingenuity it takes to make things within constraints that a traditional theory of affordance omits. I think Art School from Bed is very about that labor and ingenuity that it takes to make things work within constraints. That feels very central, both to our Art School from Bed, but also like my art in general. Oh, I need to take a break from reading out loud. Resting is nice. We can have little brain snacks. We can have little body snacks. We can have little pooch snacks. Are you a pooch snack? You are, huh? A wild Stephen has again been spotted passing the grove, where kisses are demanded, but denied for some reason, even though kisses are required by society. Apparently, we're not getting any kissing today. Sir, I'm supposed to be getting kissing. That's rude. Oh, let's do a little bit of stretching. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, we went on a long bike ride yesterday, so my body is feeling a little bit worn down. Deep breaths. Let me stretch my neck a little bit. Why do we have yoga teachers who teach us to do specific exercises, but we don't have rest teachers? Oh, we lost our dog. Au revoir, dog friend. I hope you come back soon. Oh, in the dog's absence, I'm gonna get a little bit more snuggly. Oh. A wild Stephen appears. What? You're a wild Stephen. My favorite gremlins. I'm okay. I'm safe, and I'm warm, and I'm loved, and I have food and water. I have medicine. I have people to call if I need help. I'm good. I'm doing good. Oh, man. Resting can be hard. I think partially because of the story required. Like, not only do we have to convince ourselves that we deserve rest, but we also have to experiment and understand what feels restful to us, what feels regenerating. Because it's not the same for everyone. Like, laying in bed and drinking coffee and reading a book is not going to be restful for everyone. Having a rest buddy in a video is also not going to be restful for everyone. But I think personally, I need to experiment more and share those experiments more to find the places in my life where I can stop. And then, of course, because it's me we're talking about, immediately my brain says, well, but you're making a video. You're talking. This isn't rest because you're being productive. And maybe that part of my brain is right. Maybe this won't work. But part of treating your life like an artistic experiment is that you gotta do the experiment. So that's what we're doing. We're doing the experiment. And we will see afterward if the experiment was successful or not. Mapping the history of disability in disability studies and politics. Disability activists and scholars in the global north are more specifically, Britain, the United States, and Scandinavia have long argued that people are not disabled as a function of their bodies. They are disabled by the built environment that act as materialized form of exclusion and discrimination, known as the British social model. This argument focuses on the social creation of disability, which it separates from impairment as a bodily phenomenon. Mike Oliver, the founder of the social model, defined impairment as nothing less than a description of the body, while disablement, that is, the means by which disability comes into being, is nothing to do with the body. In this model, the body may be impaired in its lack of limbs, but it is disabled by the lack of ramps. The failure of the society to provide access for the impaired body. Disability is not the lack of sight, but the lack of braille, not the absence of hearing, but the absence of sign language. Because it is social processes and barriers that cause disability, what must change is not the impaired body, but the environment that the society creates for impaired bodies. The social model has endured, proliferated across geographies, and provided the foundation for disability politics as well. For example, what came to be known as the U.S. minority model built its civil rights and politics of access on the understanding that disability is in the environment, so that, as disability rights activist Harlan Hahn observed, in order for us to have equal rights, we don't have to change, but the environment has to change. Disabled people did not require that their bodies be fixed, but instead needed political action in the form of improved access, ramps, parking provisions, accessible bathrooms, and educational facilities, for example, and legislation to ensure its provision. This politics has culminated in the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is counted as a major success of the U.S. disability rights movement. Now, obviously, this is just an introduction to the social model of disability way of thinking. But I think it's telling that it doesn't focus its theory on chronically ill people. The social model of disability works better when there is a conceivable, specific affordance that you can make to make society, accessible to a specific body. But let me tell you, as a person with chronic migraine disease, I'm not so sure there really is an affordance. Other than inventing a medication that would make me not unable to withstand light or sound or motion, I'm not sure. It feels a little silly to me to say that my body doesn't need to change in order to access society. Yes, as a person with chronic migraine, I should, be able to have a good life. I should have, housing and food and water and all of those things. But I'm not sure you could really design an educational institution other than just one that was do whatever works for you, and we'll never have making everyone else I guess I'm talking myself into their argument, because a lot of the things that for my disability make things inaccessible is something has to happen at a specific time, like the idea of deadlines or the idea of attendance or having to be somewhere in person or a lot of those sort of like time-based strictures and inflexibility. So I guess the ramp for chronic migraine, in my case at least, is you never expect or you know, like we can schedule things at a time, but if it gets changed, like that's fine. And for some people that really is okay. But for many people, like that's just not functional in their lives. So it's hard for me to think about like ways that disability sort of negate each other, or not disabilities, but like access needs can like come into conflict. And I want to make sure that other people have access and that the other people have like what they need, even I guess even if sometimes that means I don't have what I need. Disability theory is confusing. Let's read more. Let's get even more snuggly. I need more pillow. Oh, actually, let's take a break. Oh. You're doing good, everybody. We're doing good. We're laying down. Or maybe you're not laying down, but I am. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling cozy, and I'm feeling a little bit woozy. I'm a little woozy right now. That's probably the POTS, but you know, POTS is normal in my body. I'm a little bit scared. Money scared, which comes and goes. Part of the hard part about rest seems like being here. Not in a mindfulness way exactly, but more maybe it is mindfulness. I'm noticing right now in my body a resistance to want to keep doing the resting. There's sort of an itch to get up and move and do and checklist and achieve. But I'm also feeling some nausea, some headache, some dizziness. And part of wanting to get up and stop resting this far in, which I think we've been resting for about 20 minutes, is sort of a resistance to being bored, I think. Does reading help sort of get past that resistance to being bored? Let's see. Let's read a little bit more and see how that feels. While the social model clearly provides an effective way to depathologizing disability and attributing that responsibility of displacement to the society, the model also became subject to various critiques within and beyond the academy. One critique came from feminist disability scholars who challenged the field's failure to consider impairment as a subject worthy of investigation in its own right, particularly because of its parochial particularly because of its parochial focus on the social creation of disability. Hamhock, what's parochial mean? Oh, I don't know. I guess I'll look it up. I know I've seen that word before, but I don't remember what it means. All right, let's look it up. Did you know that when you're reading, you're allowed to just look up words? Do, 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 do. All right. Paroch. Oh, I lost it. IAL. Parochial. Parochialism is the state of mind whereby one focuses on small sections of an issue rather than considering its wider context. More generally, it consists of being narrow in scope. Huh. Okay. Particularly because of its parochial focus on the social creation of disability, or disability as all. Grounded in the feminist refusal of the body-mind, public-private binaries, and the insistence on the personal as political. These scholars argued that the body, and particularly the bodily experience of impairment, was a fundamentally political matter that should be central to disability studies. If pain, by definition, hurts, Liz Crow asks, then how can it be disregarded? Impairment was also an important subject of study because even if the social model's goals of removing all barriers were complete, arguably an impossibility, the bodily mental experiences of impairment, such as illness, suffering, depression, and fatigue, would remain. For these scholars, the experience of impairment was not simply given, it was precisely a phenomenon that needed investigation. As Sammy Linton wrote, impairment is as nuanced and complex a construct as disability. Ultimately, feminist scholars argued a disability studies and politics that failed to acknowledge the bodily experience of impairment would be inadequate and incomplete. Yeah, that feels pretty accurate to me, actually. Oh, really like sunken down into my pillows, which is nice. I think what I'm realizing is that rest is a process that it has like a beginning and a middle and an end. You have to sort of ease into it and let it overtake you. And now that I'm about half an hour into my little resting performance experiment, I'm feeling more at ease, more sunken into my little rest situation. I've changed speeds and elevations. A second aspect of the social model that came under criticism was not the understandable goal of depathologizing people with disabilities, but the way it achieved that goal. In separating impairment from disability, the social model not only shifted responsibility for addressing disabled people's needs from that group to the society, but also refused any association between disability and illness or disease. There could be nothing wrong with an impaired body, it was just different. But as Susan Wendell bluntly put it, some people with disabilities are sick, diseased, and ill. That's me. In truth, impairment takes many forms, some healthy, some unhealthily disabled, and can fluctuate between these variations. A further corollary to the separation of impairment from disease or illness was that of the problem of disability lay in the environment, then treatment, and the desire or support for treatment would only reinforce the impaired body's pathologization. But critics of the social model have argued that treatment was not necessarily a betrayal of disability politics. As Alison Kafer has cautioned, a desire for a cure is not necessarily an anti-crip or anti-disability rights and justice position. People with disabilities might seek treatment in addition to fighting against ableism, exactly because of the bodily experiences of impairment that exist regardless of environmental conditions or their improvement. Oh, I love that line. A desire for a cure is not necessarily an anti-crip or anti-disability rights and justice position. I would like to alleviate suffering. Sometimes the alleviation of suffering is by giving access, and sometimes the alleviation of suffering is just a fucking cure. Further, impairments are locally experienced, shaped by the material, social conditions under which they lived. Considering these specifics, the meaning of medical and rehabilitative interventions may differ depending on the local context in which the impairment has to be lived with. For example, an amputee woman in rural Botswana, as Julie Livingston's work reveals, may wear an ill-fitting prosthesis, not because she embraces a deficit or a medical model, but because the device simply helps her to farm the fields and hence to survive. In Chapter 4, I will be drawing on additional criticisms of the field's first wave that attend to its failure to address social differences and inequalities among bodies produced through histories of colonization and radicalization. For the moment, though, I want to focus on the theoretical requirements that arise from the criticisms already reviewed. These critical interventions call for what Tom Sabers names a theory of complex embodiment, one that would provide a means of addressing the disability effects of the environment and factors that derive from the body, such as pain, aging, and illness. Such a theory would in turn allow for treatment as compatible with disability politics rather than as a capitulation to ableism. And part of that difficulty in their theory seems to reinforce the the able versus disabled binary, which I don't think exists. I definitely perceive all bodies in all circumstances with all like histories and accesses and like material circumstances as this huge multi-dimensional array of needs, and some of those needs, like access to a stable food web, food sources, aren't thought of as like accessibility affordances. And so we don't think of the people who need those things as like disabled people who are being given an affordance. And we don't think of like things that give a lot of people access to like like very fast transit, for example, like planes, aeroplanes, or cars or trains. We don't think of those as accessibility affordances because, you know, like quote able-bodied people can't run fast enough to like get to New York in 5 hours. Like if if Superman were real, maybe we would think that planes were an accessibility affordance. But because there is no Superman, we have this strange division of like who is and who is not getting an access affordance, as opposed to just like everyone is getting accessibility affordances all the time, and some people get them better than other people. It feels a little bit similar to the history of like the concept of race being used to sort of like divide light-skinned and dark-skinned like poor people into different categories so that they wouldn't consider themselves like one community. It's essentially like fracking poor communities, or sorry, fracturing poor communities into like racial categories in order to have the light-skinned racial category of people identify with the rich light-skinned people, in order to like perpetuate their own oppression, essentially. Like it feels similar to that. It feels like when we think of able-bodied people as a separate category from disabled people, that also means that we consider affordances for the disabled people as like a special separate thing. It's not special and separate. Everyone is being given affordances all the time. You just don't recognize them for what they are. Hmm. Okay, I think we need to take a reading break. What page are we on? 35. Excellent, excellent. Oh, oof, I need a little bit of resettlement. Oof. Oh, what time is it? Let's check on how time we've been doing. I think we've been doing pretty good for our rest break. Oh, that's too bright. I think we've been doing pretty good. I am realizing that I think I'm getting a migraine aura. So I should probably take my medication, which I think I have enough right here. Although my oxygen tank is upstairs. Oof. Oh no. That was loud. Let me take this off. Oh. All right. Oh no, I ran out. Oh no, there's one dose left. Oh. Oh. Okay. I'm gonna take my meds, and then I'm gonna stop recording, and then I'm gonna get my oxygen tank, and then I will do my oxygen, and everything will be okay.